Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue with Lesson 10 of our Academic Writing and Research course, and we're going to talk about really developing good research questions. So, today we're going to identify the characteristics of a strong research question, which I've already touched on in some previous videos. We're going to differentiate between general topics and focused inquiries. We're going to talk about how sometimes our research questions, which are really focused inquiries, can grow out of general topics of interest. We're going to use our thesis statement and the CARS model to work towards a research question formulation. And we're going to work on revising weak research questions and creating publishable academic research questions. So let's get started. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about what you were initially curious about when you began your doctoral or your master's research or whatever research article that you're currently writing. And if you're not currently working on your doctorate, or perhaps you haven't established what your topic is going to be, then this is a good opportunity to think about what topics you are interested in right now. So these don't have to be very focused. These can be broad topics. So for me, I love second language writing. So you might say, okay, I'm going to start with second language writing. Now, by themselves, these topics that we're interested in, they're not research questions, but they can serve as the building blocks to a great research question. And, if you've already established what you're doing for your PhD, you can even think beyond that. What are some other topics that are perhaps related to your PhD, but maybe a little bit different that you might want to branch out to? Because ultimately, you're going to present your PhD research, but you're also going to want to continue to publish and present. So you're going to need to find new materials. You're going to need to build on what you've previously done. So think about how you can build on what you've already done. I want you to think about your CARS model. Remember, we talked about we're going to establish the territory, then we're going to establish our niche, and then we're going to work to occupy that niche. So how might your research question grow out of this? Well, when you're establishing your territory, you're just helping your audience to figure out why this topic is important. What's the significance of the research that you're doing? Why does it matter? Then, when you establish the gap in the research, now you're getting into the area where you might start to investigate a research question. You haven't come to it yet, but you're talking about here's what needs to be done. Hopefully, when your research question that you formulate is answered, you're going to have filled that gap. And that's where you're occupying that research. So, when you talk about your thesis and how you're occupying that research, that's where you're really answering your research question. So your thesis statement is built from your research question. So let's look at this thesis. This study examines how doctoral students in STEM navigate imposter syndrome using writing support strategies at one Ethiopian university. So a research question might be, how do Ethiopian doctoral students in STEM experience and manage imposter syndrome in academic writing contexts? Okay, and we can see how closely related the thesis and the research question are. So remember, we've talked in our previous videos about what makes a good research question. We said it wants to be focused. We want it to be researchable, right? It's got to be something that you can find the answer to. It should be complex, not something you're going to answer very quickly with a quick internet search. It's got to be relevant to whatever topic or field you're doing research in, and it's got to be clear and specific. So let's take a look at these three research questions. I want you to tell me which one is strongest and why. Why is climate change damaging? Wow, that's very broad. How are drought-resistant crops adopted in rural Ethiopia, and what factors influence adoption? Wow, that's pretty good. I think we could polish that research question further, but I think that's a pretty good start. And the last one is, how is online learning effective? Okay, so yeah, that last one, too broad, not specific at all, not clear. So really that second one is the best one. So let's look at different styles of research questions. A descriptive question asks what exists. And remember, we said this isn't really something we want to do for a doctoral research study. It's simply, it's too basic. If we do something descriptive, we have to go further and do something that is an analysis of what we described. Analytical, how or why does something happen? An explanatory or correlational study, what's the relationship between X and Y? A comparative study, how do two or more groups or situations differ? An exploratory study. So what are the unknowns in this area? What are you attempting to figure out? So remember, correlational studies, and I've got an asterisk there, that's because they simply talk about the existence of a relationship. They are not causal, right? You've probably heard correlation does not indicate causation. Okay, we're just talking about, does this exist? Explanatory, on the other hand, goes a bit further, and we can talk about causes, and that's where you really get into a different range of statistical tests. So let's take a look at this first descriptive question. What types of writing support services are currently available to postgraduate students at Addis Ababa University, and how are they accessed? Okay, well, that first part there, what types? You're just talking about what's there. And how can they be accessed? They can be accessed online. You can go in and access them in person. It's just descriptive. Not a very good doctoral study. Analytical. In what ways do gender dynamics influence doctoral students' participation, feedback styles, and engagement in research writing groups? Okay, that's a really good study. I think that would be a very interesting study. Explanatory. What's the relationship between types of peer feedback received and changes in writing self-efficacy among multilingual doctoral students in Ethiopia? That would be a really interesting study. Comparative, how do doctoral students from STEM and humanities disciplines differ in their revision strategies and use of feedback during the thesis writing process? And exploratory, what are the key linguistic, structural, and institutional challenges faced by Ethiopian PhD students when attempting to publish articles in English language journals? So we've got a wide array of different styles of research questions and some examples of what you may choose to do with your research. So I want you to identify the type of question. The first one says, what challenges do Ethiopian doctoral students face when writing the literature review section of their dissertations in English? That's an exploratory study. Number two, what academic mental health support services are currently available to doctoral students at Addis Ababa University, and how frequently are they used? Clearly descriptive, just what's there. How do faculty mentorship styles shape doctoral students' confidence in developing research proposals? Wow, that's an interesting question, and that's very analytical. How do PhD candidates in the social sciences and natural sciences differ in their use of AI-assisted writing tools for revision? That's a comparative study. Okay, we're talking about PhD candidates in the social sciences and the natural sciences. So we're comparing the two. What's the relationship? So right there, I've got the keyword relationship between access to academic English training and successful journal publication among first-year PhD students. Correlation, we're talking about a relationship. So let's talk about improving research questions. I've got 3 questions here, and they are very undeveloped. So we're going to work together, and we're going to try to develop these into questions. Number 1, why is writing hard? Okay, that's really broad. Does AI help second language writers? Okay, well, I think that's an interesting topic. That's a very interesting topic. I'd be interested in exploring that topic, but I would need to establish the territory and I'd need to figure out what's been done in second language writing and how I'm going to contribute to what's missing, what gaps remain in the literature. And how can we improve grammar? Okay, so that's again very non-specific. So I've got some possible answers here. What rhetorical challenges do multilingual students face when composing research articles in English? Okay, instead of why is writing hard, I'm talking about specific challenges students face. I've narrowed down a population, multilingual students. I could even narrow that down further and say multilingual undergraduate students in first year freshman composition, something like that. And when they're composing research articles. I suppose if you're in first year freshman composition, you're probably not doing research articles, but it could be first year doctoral students. And number two, how does AI-assisted writing software influence revision behaviors and academic integrity perceptions among grad students? Oh, great topic. Something that I was just writing on. I just had a proposal accepted for a conference on this. Really timely topic. If you are a second language researcher, that's a really terrific topic to look into. And the last one, how do doctoral students use feedback to improve grammatical accuracy in their writing over time? So again, talking about improving grammatical accuracy, we're talking about improving grammar. We've got a more specific population. We're talking about doctoral students. I could focus that even further. I'm talking about over time. I might want to be a little bit more specific. So, I think these aren't really perfect, polished questions, but I think they're moving in the right direction. So I want you to pause the video and work through these three questions now. Is peer feedback good or bad? Do students like online writing support? How does culture affect writing? Okay, so pause the video and try to polish those into three really good research questions. Okay, so here are some possible answers. What benefits and challenges do doctoral students experience when using peer feedback during revision? How do multilingual doctoral students evaluate the effectiveness of virtual writing support programs? And how do cultural writing norms influence rhetorical structure among postgraduate thesis writers in Ethiopia? That would be a really terrific research study. You could build on research into contrastive rhetoric, which has been around since the 1960s. That would be a really fascinating study, and also something that I think is probably under-researched. So look at this scaffold. This is not perfect, okay, but this is something that you can use as a framework to help you. What's the relationship between 1 and 2 in or among using? And you're talking about a method or how you're viewing this particular question. So you might say this study investigates how access to English language writing centers impacts the confidence and productivity of multilingual doctoral students. So concept 1, access to English writing centers. Concept 2, confidence and productivity of multilingual doctoral students. This study explores the link between gender identity and participation in academic writing groups. So right there, gender identity, concept 1, participation in academic writing groups, concept 2. Among postgraduate STEM students, there's your population. Drawing on focus group interviews and observation data, there's your method or your lens. So I think that's a really good structure to get you to think about what your question needs to include. This research examines how the use of AI-based grammar tools affects the revision practices and perceived authorship of first-year doctoral students in applied linguistics programs using a mixed methods approach. Okay, so again, you've got the use of AI-based grammar tools as concept 1, and revision practices and perceived authorship, concept 2. Your population, first-year doctoral students in applied linguistics program. And your method or lens, it's mixed methods. Okay, so I won't go through all of these, but here are three more that you can look at. Okay, you can pause the video and see how this particular scaffold for a research question can really be used in a variety of ways to create some pretty good foundations for your research questions. Okay, so let's go from thesis to research question. I want you to look at this thesis. This study examines how multilingual doctoral students in applied linguistics programs revise their academic writing in response to peer review, using draft analysis, peer feedback samples, and participant interviews to explore changes in rhetorical clarity, organization, and writer confidence over the course of a semester. So, what possible research questions can you pull from this thesis? And you could pull several. What kinds of rhetorical and organizational changes do multilingual doctoral students make to their writing after receiving peer feedback? How do multilingual doctoral students perceive the role of peer review in improving clarity and coherence in their academic writing? Which peer review practices do students find most supportive for building writing confidence and self-efficacy? And what is the relationship between the type of feedback received and the depth of revision made by the multilingual writers? So I think that's another really interesting question. I think this is enough. We don't want to go too far. You start getting into 5, 6, 7 research questions. That's a lot, even for a dissertation. You really want to focus your study. Okay, so for your skills lab, I want you to take some time to work on editing. I want you to rewrite this so it sounds clear. Think about grammar, sentence structure, the use of articles, verb tense, and academic tone. So you can pause the video, you can work through this, and then unpause the video to look at our answer. Okay, so here we've got an updated, edited version that you can apply and compare to your answer. So I want you to go through each of these, and you can pause the video and then you can look at my suggested response. Okay, there's answer 1. Pause the video and work through that. There's answer 2. You can pause the video here and work through this. And there is answer 3. Okay, so let's go to our, I'm going to go here to our writing lab. Okay, I want you to generate a short research rationale and formulate 3 research questions. So I want you to write down the topic that you're interested in, write a 4 to 6 sentence rationale. So why is it important? What's already known about it? And what gap exists? So right there, you're tying everything to CARS. Then I want you to identify 2 concepts that come out of this rationale, right? And go back and think about that framework, that structure where we had concept 1 and concept 2. Okay, so you're going to pull 2 concepts out. Then you're going to tie it to a population. So the 2 concepts might be revision strategies and self-efficacy. And the population might be first-year graduate students. I want you to write 3 research questions based on that, and then create a thesis statement for that rationale. Okay, so I have a sample example here. Academic writing challenges among Ethiopian doctoral students. I've got my CARS outline here, my 2 concepts, academic writing challenges, and now I've got several different concepts that I'm going to tie to academic writing challenges: support services, self-efficacy, peer feedback, and publishing outcomes. Now I've got my 3 research questions. What's the relationship between academic writing confidence and peer feedback practices among multilingual doctoral students in applied linguistics programs? How do doctoral students at Addis Ababa University perceive institutional writing support services, and how do these perceptions affect their academic publishing outcomes? What types of writing challenges are most common among first-year doctoral students in Ethiopia, and how do they address them over time? And now I've got a really good thesis. This study explores, I'm telling you what I'm doing, the relationship between peer feedback and academic writing confidence among multilingual doctoral students at Addis Ababa University using interviews, revision samples to examine how feedback shapes their revision strategies. Okay, so you can apply this writing lab to either your own research or an activity that you want to build out based on your research. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in our next lesson at the Language Arts Gallery.